Now that we have taught you how to read and understand the widest demi color palette in the world, let's teach you how to formulate with it. Let's help you to be able to create your own customized formulations with ease and clarity. When it comes to formulation, keep in mind that everything comes down to your individual canvas and the needs of that canvas. Today, I am going to give you the rules of the road to give you an outline of how to approach each head of hair and each part of the head. When it comes to creating the perfect reds, the perfect brunette, blonde, or blonde, it is all about creating a solid plan. When we step into a color application without any direction, it can sometimes lead to roadblocks. So without further ado, it's time for us to learn the keys to success with customized Shades EQ formulations. Now let's talk about zone toning 101. Okay, I have a question for you. Raise your hand if you're a musher. You know who you are. You take that bottle of Shades EQ, you're putting it all over the hair, you're massaging it, you're mushing it, you're looking at it and going, is it ready yet? Well, let's help you to feel more confident. Shades EQ is meant to be applied actually in a zone toning fashion. Zone 1 is root, zone 2 is mids, and zone 3 is ends. So why do I prefer to zone tone rather than a traditional global glossing? When we lift the hair, doesn't the root lift differently than that of the ends? So my question to you is, why wouldn't we treat the needs of the root with something differently than that of the ends? Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that for a client looking to be bright blonde to the root that you must make their root dark. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's that you can make the color appear more seamless by utilizing various series for the variety of needs that each zone may have. Let me give you an example. You know I love examples. When I do a traditional on-scalp lightening service, rarely am I global glossing. I mean, rarely. And here's the why behind it. It's that the ends will most likely be more porous. So by applying the same formula throughout and all over, I do risk an overtone on those ends. Maybe the zone 1 will be okay, but it may be overtoned on the zone 3. So what I do is I will apply one formula on my root and another on my ends. And generally, I'm adding clear into the zone 3 formula, whereas I'm rarely adding clear into that zone 1 formula because I want the full tonal deposit in there. So now that we have an understanding as to why zone toning is important, let's discuss how to approach formulation on a zone 1. A question that I get a lot is, does Shades EQ deposit true to level? Well, let's discuss. What we know to be true about Shades EQ is that the product itself is the most efficient when applied to dry hair. I mean, it's meant to be applied on 100% dry hair. However, we also know there are stylists out there who apply the product to wet or towel dried hair. Now, listen, let's set some things straight. The correct way to use Shades EQ is actually on fully dry hair, allowing it to process for a full 20 minutes. This is the only way Redken tells us to use it. This is what's on the physical box, and this is how Redken themselves formulates, tests, and guarantees all of the Shades EQ series will live up to maximum performance. On dry hair, 20 minutes, Shades EQ gives the optimum level of longevity, deposit, shine, condition, bonding power, and all of its other incredible benefits. But I know that sometimes, depending on the situation, the desired result, maybe the weather, or maybe how much coffee we had, some of us may or may not play with those variables. You know how I know? Because I'm watching you. I see you. No, I'm not. I'm breaking the rules myself sometimes, and that's okay, as long as we know the rules before breaking them and what exactly we're losing by doing so. If applied on dry hair, it will deposit true to level. If applied to wet or towel dried hair, the potency of Shades EQ, as well as the deposit, pigment, and longevity will not be as strong. It'll be weaker. Now, knowing the cause and the effect between applying on wet versus dry, it should help you to decide how you choose to approach a specific head of hair. Okay, so now that we know Shades EQ on wet hair will be more diluted in its deposit, here are some really interesting ways to approach formulating should you choose this route. In my eyes, you need to know what your toning intention is always. Okay, so there's a couple of them. Are you looking to, in zone 1, soften the foil lines? Are you looking to eliminate the foil lines, or are you looking to color melt? Who is going to be a candidate for each, right? Well, softening foil lines is for the client who wants to look in the mirror and they want to feel like a blonde all the way to the root. Eliminating foil lines will be a client looking to have a more lived-in feel, right? They're kind of like, let's just sort of vibe out on this. The color melting type of client, in my eyes, is someone who says, I want to deepen my base by at least one level. I want to see the depth. So let's break it down. For softening foil lines, you're going to formulate at the same level as the client's natural, so it deposits one level lighter than the client's natural. It's not lifting, but again, the translucency, plus on wet hair. For eliminating foil lines, you're going to formulate one level darker than the natural, so it deposits at the same level as the natural. And for color melting, someone who wants to go darker by at least one level, you will formulate 2 levels darker than the natural, so it deposits 1 level darker than the natural. Now, you may be thinking, so hold on a second, Adrienne. You are telling me that if my client, who is a level 4 and wants to be a level 9 blonde, you want me to put a 4 on her root? No way, I'm not gonna do it. It's gonna be too dark. Well, to that, let me challenge you a bit. Have you ever put a level 7 on a level 4 root? Have you? I mean, tell me about it. What happened? Literally nothing, because the level was lighter than the base itself. Also, keep in mind that for a client who wants to just soften foil lines, you are doing a root tap. So that means that your brush stroke itself will be minimal. It's more of a tap, therefore depositing a more minimal amount of product onto that zone 1. So now that you are a formulation genius when it comes to the zones, it's time to talk about your friend and mine, low lighting. You know, low lighting is one of the few services that I can guarantee every single time you are applying on 100% dry hair. So that brings us back to the fact that Shades EQ does deposit true to level when applied on dry hair. When formulating a low light, especially on a porous blonde, it can feel confusing and sometimes a little scary. I think that we have all found out the hard way that the N series is not the true natural. And unfortunately, we found that out amid low light. I don't know about you, but for me, I opened up that foil and I kind of saw it. I closed it up. And you know when they say, how's it looking? And you go, it's looking phenomenal. I'm also going to shampoo you right now. But the good news is you now have so many tools in your hairstylist tool belt to understand each series more clearly. I find that most stylists are low lighting on blondes and brunettes. You know, in my career, I have never in my life had a blonde come in and say to me, you know what I would really love, Adrienne? Just a warm, brassy low light. Let's go for it. If they did, that would make my life much easier and yours. But alas, all blondes are seeking pretty much to go more lived in or darker, and they want it to be cool or neutral. So how do we achieve this without risking a muddy deposit? This is where the power of reflect and background come into play in a huge way. But before we identify which series to choose, I want to give you an analogy when it comes to formulating for a blonde's low light. I want you to think of 3 of the 4 seasons: winter, summer, fall. In the winter, everything is cool and cold. In the summer, everything is bright and light and as golden as the sun. And then there's the fall, where it is the perfect balance between warmth and cool. So circling back, blondes are missing pigment that if we neglect to formulate properly, we risk an ultra translucent flat deposit or an overly warm deposit. So by adding in a cool, we are canceling out unwanted warmth and casting a wintry shadow upon the formula. By adding an element of warmth or summer, we are adding a fill into our formula to fill missing pigment and to add vibrancy and just yumminess to the low light. And by adding in neutral or a fall tone, we are adding a foundation that will only promote balance. Okay, so what series should you choose? I prefer when low lighting to exclusively utilize series that live within the brown to tan background. This way, everything I am using has a natural controlled foundation to it. For my winter series, I love an N or even an M. For my summer series, a G, a WG, a GG, or an NW are amazing. And for my fall series, NB, GI, or GB they're perfect. When you have all three elements in a formula for a blonde, it creates balance. Now, how do you know at what level though to formulate your low light? Again, when we low light, it is on dry hair. So what you're going to do is you're gonna determine what your desired end result level is. You're gonna look at your client and say, when it is all said and done, what level do I want this to live at? And then you're gonna formulate at that level. So if you want the low light to be a level 6, you're gonna formulate at a 6. But here is the kicker. There's always a kicker, right? You're always going to add clear into your low light formulation. As we learned earlier, clear equals control. When we low light, the reality is that our low lights are often processing way longer than 20 minutes. So to safeguard ourselves, you can add in clear to your formula to dilute the intensity of the reflect colors. Remember, not the level, but the reflect colors. This way, it, in a sense, sort of buys you time and gives you a cushion so you can focus more so on precision foil work rather than rushing through. I am a firm believer that when foiling, pace is personal, my friends. There should not be a rush. And by adding in clear, you can take the time you need to create a beautiful head of hair. Okay, now you are a formulation genius when it comes to low lighting. It's time for us to move on to our next segment, calisthenics. I'm just gonna start stretching and then we're gonna get into it in a second, so get ready. Now it's time to talk about filling. Repeat after me. Filling is a 2-step process. But, okay, why? I mean, can't we just add the fill into our formula to save time? Here is the reality. The only time that you can do that is when you're low lighting. And here's why. When we low light, the goal for the grow out is to have the color fade out of the hair. Whereas when we are taking a client from all over blonde to all over brunette, we don't want it to fade. We want it to grow out. When you add the fill into the formula for a low light, it's totally okay because of our desire for a fade of the color, but not with an all over color. When we skip the important step of filling, we are stripping our client of color retention and of vibrancy. A great example would be if you have ever had a blonde client come in, maybe they were a level 9, and they say, I want to be a 7 copper. You apply 07C all over, you process it for 20 full minutes, and lo and behold, upon drying, it not only appears lighter than the level, but it's kind of oddly muddy, even though it's copper. This is because we skipped the step of filling. So there was a foundation that was already lacking pigment rather than having a solid foundation to give the color something to grab onto. If our fill is lacking vibrancy and if our fill is lacking luster, then so will our final color. So this is why I carefully craft all of my fill formulas just as much as I do my final formula. So here are your filling rules. I want you to determine your desired end result level for your color. So after you do that, Then you're going to lift 2 levels lighter. And then following that, you will formulate your fill, which will be 1 level lighter. I know, that was a lot. Let me simplify even more. If you want, when your client is all said and done, to live at a level 7, you will lift to a level 9 and you will fill at a level 8. You also want to consider the vibrancy you are seeking at the end. So, for example, with my chocolate brunettes, I like to fill with 1 series from brown to tan and 1 series from no background. This way it has a natural and also true to tone combination just to give it that extra punch. One of my all-time favorite chocolate brunette fills is NB plus yellow kicker. I am rarely adding clear into a fill formula because I'm seeking, when filling, the full tonal deposit. This is another situation where it's really important to apply your Shades EQ on dry hair, because when you apply it on dry hair, you're going to get the maximum pigment and maximum results. And that's what you need when it comes to a fill. The fill needs that retention. And don't forget about the importance of the 20-minute processing time. Okay, now you were already a zone toning genius. Now it's time for us to move into our next segment because you have mastered filling. Formulation ratio time. Now that you've learned how to formulate, let's help you to understand what percentage of each series should be in your formulation. Let me ask you, when you think of the combination of 09V and 09GI, have you ever felt confused how much of each you should mix? Perhaps you just sort of roll the dice and you mix 50-50. But, to that I would ask you, have you ever felt like on a blonde, this combination tended to deposit a bit more violet than you had hoped? So here's another analogy for you, now that you know I love analogies, and I hope that this will help you to feel clarity when it comes to ratios. When I think of the Shades EQ palette as a whole, I think about a movie. In a movie, there are main characters, supporting characters, and there's extras. The main character is the most memorable part. They have the largest amount of screen time and they carry the movie itself. And then there are the supporting characters. They support the main. And of course, don't forget about the extras. The extras have the smallest amount of screen time. They are present and you know that they're there, yet you can't individually pick them out. We can view Shades EQ backgrounds like a movie. Brown to tan are our main characters. They are the Safe Bet series with their natural foundation. These series will be the largest portions of your formula. Then there are the supporting characters. These are our black to gray background series, as they assist to add an extra dose of cool to a formula. And lastly, the no background, who are our extras. Since no background series are true to tone, they should be our smallest percentage of the formula because of their potency. So if we were to take a moment and revisit our combination of 09V and 09GI, we may want to rethink those ratios. Here's what we now know. We now know that the GI series, being in brown to tan, should actually be the largest portion of our formula. And the V, it's in the no background, so it should be the smallest. Now, something to keep in mind is canvas, of course, always matters. So I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say you have a client, they come in and they say, I wanna be a bright cherry red. Well, in that case, you're going to reach for the RR, which lives in the no background. And all of a sudden, I'm telling you, break the rules a bit, because that RR would need to be the largest portion of your formula, when I've just told you it should probably be an extra. Just think of it this way. Sometimes the extra goes to an audition and gets cast as the main character. Canvas always matters. If you enjoyed today's class and you want to continue to hone your hair color skills, join us here at Redken for all of the incredible in-person and virtual education. Check out Redken Exchange and Gloss Boss on Tour for their class schedule. Additionally, I have 2 hair color books, Toning with Intention and Blonding with Intention. These books cover all of the ins and the outs of the Shades EQ line, including a cheat sheet within Blonding with Intention that is perfect for when you are formulating. What a fun time we had today. And I really hope that we have been able to give you the tools that you need to just start mastering and playing with Shades EQ. I want you to remember, my friends, is that it's not about being fast, but about being efficient. Pace is personal, so take your time as you embark on your formulation journey. And I want you to know that I am here along with the entire Redken network to support you along the way. I cannot wait to see what beauty you create. And even more importantly, I think you should give yourself a round of applause or give yourself a big hug, because the choice that you made to be a part of this today and to hone your skills and to just engulf yourself in education, that alone is so incredibly special. So hats off to you, my friends, and I'll see you in the color room.
That's a wrap.